So today is Monday, the day that we are here live. And we're going to talk about how do you stop starting over every Monday? Who here feels like every Monday is like, okay, I'll start next Monday, or like we get to Monday and we're just hoping for the best and that maybe somehow this week will be different than every other Monday, right, that we've started. And so I really want to talk today about how do you build a weekly rhythm that actually fits real life and that you don't have to keep restarting every single week because that can be really exhausting, right? So let's start with this. How did your Monday start for you today? Did you wake up already knowing what mattered? Now, I'm not saying I had a to-do list of the things I need to do. That's a very different thing. Our to-do list is not always our assignment. We need to hear that, right? But did you wake up already knowing today, here's what matters? Like I knew that having this conversation mattered today. So I woke up, right, with that intention around that and a few other things that I'm working on here around Substack because we've got something really special going on today and tomorrow. And I don't want you to miss out on that. So those were on my mind when I woke up this morning, along with some other personal things that I'm working on. So did you wake up already knowing what mattered today and the week that's in front of you? Or did Monday start you? Maybe you did what most people do, right? You check your phone before your feet even hit the floor. Who wakes up to like those red circles? I do not like, okay, right now I have a couple of texts, but other than that, my red circles are at 0. That is what I like. So how tempting is it when you wake up in the morning and there are those red circles, right? And you're tempted to check your phone before you open up scripture, right? And before you maybe even get out of bed. Maybe you did get out of bed, you got yourself ready, you got yourself some coffee, you got in front of your calendar, and then you're like, oh my goodness, look at all the things that are happening today or this week. Or maybe you already knew, right, what it was going to be time for. You've got a really nicely laid out plan. Maybe you have the Redeem Her Time planner, and so you've got it laid out there. And then someone needed you before you even got to what you planned. How many times has that happened, right? And regardless of which one of those it was, right? Oftentimes when it's Monday morning, we are already reacting. And then what happens? We start reacting throughout the rest of the week, right? So one of the things that I teach inside of the Stewardship Circle is the Faithful Week Framework. And here's the key that I want you all to remember. Okay, so whenever you're listening to this, whether it's a Monday or not, here is the key. Are you ready? Don't start Monday on Monday. Okay, let me say that again. Don't start Monday on Monday, because here's what happens. By the time Monday gets underway, guess what? Everyone else already has ideas about what you should or should not be doing with your time. And then we go into reaction mode all week long, right? So today, I want to show you how to approach your time in a whole different way, how to think about your time and your week in a way that is not about just how am I going to get more done, because this is not about even productivity. Now, believe me, I love good productivity. I love a week where I feel like I checked everything off my list, or at least most of it. I love a week where I had those neatly, color-coded time blocks on my calendar, and I knew exactly where I was going and what I was doing. But this is not about a perfect schedule. It's not about another color-coded system. What's really essential, because we're talking about faithful planning that meets real life, is creating a faithful rhythm for your week with enough structure to help you know what it's time for, but yet enough flexibility that your whole week doesn't fall apart when real life happens on a Monday or a Tuesday, right? You may have heard me. I've kind of been like having this tongue-in-cheek conversation when Monday may be okay, but then by Tuesday at 10 a.m., the wheels are falling off the bus already, right? So we're going to talk today about how do we have a way to not have to start over every Monday? How do we not wait till Monday to start our Monday? How do we have this faithful rhythm that is repeatable, that we can keep coming back to, and that isn't always throwing us into reaction mode? And if you are already an annual member of the Stewardship Circle, first of all, say hi in the comments and say, I'm here, because this is exactly the kind of things that we're going to keep practicing together inside the Stewardship Circle. Right? And you are already getting access to a resource that I'm going to be talking about today called the Faithful Week Framework. Right? Now, framework does not mean that this is this like, I can't breathe. We're just going to create the light structure that you need so that way you're not reacting or drifting or distracted all Monday long or all week long, right? So if you're not inside the stewardship circle yet, hang with me. Of course, I'm going to be sharing more about it as we go, because what I'm teaching today is really just the beginning. So let's start here. I'm so glad so many of you guys are on. Make sure you say hello, especially if you're in the stewardship circle. A big shout out to you guys. Most of us open our planner, and what do? We immediately start writing things in. What do you typically put in your planner? Your meetings, your tasks, your errands, your deadlines, right? But I want you to separate two things. When I talk with women about even how to use the Redeem Her Time Planner, I don't think that it should contain every single to-do in your head. And that's something I go a whole lot deeper inside my program, Faithful Focus, because we talk about how do I know if this is a true to-do versus something that's a reoccurring task. But for today, I want us to think about, okay, your faithful week is going to hold your rhythm, right? And then your planner is going to hold the details. And what I love is that when you design what your faithful week looks like for this season, then it becomes a reusable tool that you can keep coming back to. And one of the things that I teach inside of there is time anchor zones, right? And so we don't just have this big old long list, right? And hope that we get to everything. That's how I used to approach my day and my week. And I was literally scattered and never fully present anywhere because I was jumping from one thing to the next. And I was like, this isn't going to work. And so what I finally learned to do is not just all the tightly packed time blocks, but actually creating time anchor zones, these zones of my day when I know the answer to the question, what is it time for? For example, right now, it is time for me to be here having this conversation with you about how to not start over every Monday. And guess what? I just got off a call with my Faithful Focus clients where we set our intention for the week. We took time to look back at last week. We took time to look ahead at this week to make some decisions around what it's time for and what it's not and how to protect that. That is a reoccurring commitment. So that has its own time anchor zone that I do every single Monday, right? And this is the beauty of creating a rhythm, is it allows you to create space for the priorities that matter in this season and to build in the margin that you need in this season for real life, right? How many of us, we're not just doing life or business or ministry in a silo. We've also got all these other things going on in our personal life, in our health, in our family, in our community, in the world around us. And it can be very easy then to crash land into Monday, pray we make it till Friday, and something of some value got done in between. Who here has had that kind of a plan for a Monday, right? So many of us do that, or we have a plan on paper and then just life takes off and we can't even keep up and we're not even looking back at what that is, right? So I want to talk about how do we faithfully plan in a way that actually works in real life, and what does a rhythm look like for you in your week, right? In the season that you are in. And that may include some things like you have an appointment on Tuesday, or you have a project block on Thursday, or you have family plans on Saturday. There are some things that are going to change from one week to the next, and there are some things that are going to be consistent. And when you have a framework, the Faithful Week framework, right, it's going to help you give your priorities a home, right? And here is where your weekly planning time then gives those priorities a place to live this week. And before we go any further, I just want to say, this may, on the surface, sound a lot like productivity. It may sound a lot like time management training that you've been a part of. And while there are some methodologies of that may overlap, what it's really coming from is this heart of stewardship, this heart of recognizing my time is not my own. It's been entrusted to me, and it's been given to me for a purpose, to invest it on behalf of the one who gave it to me, right? We know that all of Scripture shows us, right, that everything is working towards one big story, and we get to be part of it for whatever time the Lord gives us here as a part of it. So whether that's 80 years, 90 years, 100 years, right? And so what do we do with this time in the middle? I'm not just here to manage it, to keep it contained and under control and hope that, things don't go awry. We're really here to steward it, which is why stewardship is so important. And you're going to hear me using that word all the time because it truly is the difference between managing time and stewarding time. And that's something I talk a lot about, and we'll talk more about as you hang out with me, okay? But when you join the stewardship circle, the first place I want you to go is something you're going to get immediate access to, and that's the Faithful Week framework. Is I'm going to walk you through the exact process, step by step, that I use in order to not only create this reusable rhythm, but then to actually do my weekly planning and to be able to look at this week. What are the things that God has given to me this week? In fact, that was one of the questions that I just challenged the Faithful Focus clients with just a few minutes ago was, what has God entrusted to you this week? And what are your yeses going to be? And what are your no's going to be? Right? Because we have to know ahead of time what it's time for. Otherwise, we're going to have all kinds of interruptions and invitations and things coming at it. And we're not going to, coming at us actually, right? And our calendars. We're not going to be able to discern, is this a yes or a no? And we're going to find ourselves just back in that same place. So if you're already inside the stewardship circle, the Faithful Week framework is waiting for you. You can go download it. You should have received an email right away, or you can reach out to me via a message and I will make sure to get you the direct link. And if you're hearing this and you're thinking like, this sounds like what I need, you don't have to wait until the end of the time that we're together today. You can do one of two things. You can click on the link above. I think it's just clicking on my picture, which takes you to where you can subscribe as a paid subscriber and become part of the Stewardship Circle. I'm also going to drop a link in the chat. You do have to copy that. You can't just, I don't think they're clickable yet. Hopefully Substack will change that. But go ahead and click on that and then choose annual. And then you can get started with that framework right away. And that'll get sent to you immediately. Okay. All right. If it matters, where does it live? Here's what I want you to think about. We say all the time, things matter to us, right? What would be on your list right now? If you're on live, I'd love to start seeing in the comments, what would be some things that matter to you in this season of life that you're in? What are some things that matter? Maybe it's your faith, your family, your health, friendships, the work that you're called to do, whether that's paid or unpaid. I work with women who are running businesses. I work with women who are leading ministries. I work with women who are caretaking. I work with women who are, an employee for somebody else, whatever work you're doing, your home, right? Keeping that in a good place. Maybe even having fun once in a while. I had 2 times that I had fun last week. I went to a rodeo on Wednesday and I went to the pool with some friends on Saturday. And so often we say, yeah, those things matter. But here's the thing. If I looked at your calendar, and this is where I'm going to be honest, right? If you looked at my calendar, typically you're not seeing fun things every single week, right? But I say that matters and I know that it matters. But when you look at my calendar, could you actually find them? Making more disciples. I love that, right? And here is the thing. You should be able to tell what a priority is to someone if something matters. You can actually look at 2 places. One is their bank account. What are they spending money on, right? So if you were to go and pull up your latest credit card statement or bank statement and look at where am I spending my money, it is going to show what you prioritize. Do you know where the other place is to go and see what someone truly believes matters most? Not just what they say, but what they truly believe matters most? Look at their calendar, right? Because here's the thing. So many of us say things matter, but the mistake we make is saying something matters and we don't give it a place in our week. And inside the Faithful Week framework, I use this illustration. I don't have one of the pieces here, but I'll pull out the other one. I talk about oranges and Skittles. Your oranges are the things that matter. Okay. So pretend I have an orange, right? I could have grabbed a peach, I guess, but your orange, it's got nutrients, it's got vitamins, it's got fiber, it's got vitamin C, it's got a lot of important things. And I love, one of my clients pointed out one day, she's like, and here I am dropping my Skittle. She said an orange actually has sections. So even inside that area, for example, your family, you may have a relationship with a spouse. You may have a relationship with kids, grandkids, parents, in-laws, extended family, right? We have different sections, but the oranges are the things that matter and really give life, right? These are the things that we want to be spending time on. Your relationship with the Lord, your health, your people. I love that you're asking this question. Do you serve men as well? When I coach people in my programs, it's for women, but you are more than welcome to be a part of what's going on here because time is the great equalizer, right? Whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, we all get 24 hours a day. And if we are in a relationship with the author of time, the Lord, right? And we are being called to steward that time. So I always love saying, I love talking to women because I know how we think. I know how we multitask. I guarantee we all either have multiple tabs in front of us on our computer, on our phone, or in our heads because that's how we are. But I know that guys are in the same place too, right? So I encourage you to, yes, stay around for that. Okay. And so think about, what are your oranges right now in this season? What are the things that really do matter? I actually teach, I believe there are 8 key areas in our life: our faith walk, our family, our friendships, our service, the work we do, our stewardship of resources, our health, our passions, the fun, and our dwelling, the space that we live in, right? These are the things that God has entrusted to us in this season. But then we have this other thing called the Skittles, right? These are the little things that can fill quietly every available space. Anybody ever feel that? I actually heard this on 2 different sources, but I don't remember where they were. So just trust me on this, that Skittles are one of the unhealthiest candies that are out there. I mean, think about this. There's no nutritional value in this. It's all, fake flavor, fake colors, and sugar, right? It may feel fun and fruity in the moment, but guess what? You're going to be hungry a little bit later, or your stomach's going to feel like, oh, I just had way too much. But the Skittles are the little things that quietly fill all the available space. What is that in our modern day? Hello, the rings, dings, and pings that come in here, right? Or maybe, all the things in your inboxes or your news feeds or notifications or errands and requests and busy work. And what I say is, all the little things that feel urgent. Are you familiar with the idea of tyranny of the urgent? And here's what happens. I actually have my jar here. If you fill the jar with Skittles first, there is not room for many oranges, right? Like I could only probably fit 1 orange in here. Now this is my small version of my jar. I have a larger one that I need to that I need to get out so you can actually see that here. Okay, but here's the thing: is when you start letting the Skittles fill up first, then there's not room for the oranges, or you may only get to 1 or 2, right? So what we have to do is actually put the oranges in first, and it's so interesting. The Skittles fill around it. Have you ever seen that illustration with the pebble, like the little tiny rocks and the river rocks? It's the same thing. So when I have my big jar, right, and I fill it up with a jar of a bunch of Skittles, I have it in a pitcher, right? It fills to over half. I go to start putting some oranges in, only a couple fit in, right? And then they're falling all over the top. And I think that's how most of us feel. Like, Lissa, I'm over capacity. There's not time for it all, right? There just isn't, enough of me to go around for all of these things. And what's so interesting is what I do is I dump everything out, and then I take the very same jar, so it did not change in size. I put those 8 oranges in first, and I say, look, it all fits. And everybody looks at me like, Lissa, that is not real life, because I do have Skittles in my life. And I say, okay. And I take that pitcher with the exact same amount of Skittles. But remember earlier, there wasn't room for it all, and it was falling all over the place. It wasn't even like it could balance on top. Like it was not even going in. And I start pouring the Skittles over those oranges. And guess what? It just kind of fills in around. And there's actually a gap. There's some margin. Nothing changed about the amount of oranges. Nothing changed about the amount of Skittles. Nothing changed about the jar itself. What changed was the order. And here's what I want you to remember next. So first we said Monday doesn't start on Monday. Here's the next thing I want you to remember. Order determines capacity. Order determines capacity, right? Put your priorities in first before we let all the Skittles of the day or of a Monday or the week fill up. And so I want to ask you right now, if you're watching live or if you're watching a replay on this, there's probably a place for you to comment around here. What is one orange, one thing that you say matters to you that isn't really seeming to fit in the jar these days? It doesn't really have a home in your week right now, right? I want you to think about what is one thing. You may be like, Lissa, I got 100 things. Okay, and that may be true. But guess what? If we try to change 100 things, we're going to change nothing. So let's start with one. What is one thing that you say matters to you, but doesn't really have a home in your week right now? Or it feels like it is, but maybe it's really getting squeezed and it's making orange juice more than it is, right? Like really filling that space. The first step is always to identify what matters. What is the orange? And then the second thing is where does it belong? And how do I put that in my week first before the week fills up? And then I get to the end of it and say, well, there wasn't time for it again. Just like my fun, right? It wasn't happening until I started putting those opportunities in first. Now, here's what I want to say. Remember, this is not about productivity. Okay, this doesn't necessarily mean you need to put another task on your list or you need to get up earlier or stay up later. In fact, by doing it this way, by using the Faithful Week framework, you actually can get more sleep because there's actually time for the things that matter. And you're not staying up late trying to cram it in because you let so many Skittles come in earlier in the day. Okay. So what we're talking about is that these priorities, these things that God has entrusted to you to move forward or take care of in this season, They need a place. They need a place. And this is actually why this idea of stewardship is so important and why I created the stewardship circle, because I don't think most of us need more information about time, right? I don't even think you necessarily need another planner, although I do highly recommend the Redeem Her Time Planner for a lot of reasons. I don't think that you need to be told what should matter in your life right now. I think you know that time with the Lord matters, and time with your family matters, and rest matters, and the work that you're called to do matters. And you know you shouldn't be running through your week constantly hurrying, right? And trying to push the margins, push the boundaries of the limits of time and trying to fit more into the time that you have. But I know that the thing of it is the hard question is, okay, Lissa, what do I actually do with all of this when I'm in the middle of my real week? Right? Because again, on Sunday, it can look really pretty on paper. And then we get into the middle of it and it's tempting to like throw our hands up and be like, why do I even bother? Because nothing's going to happen the way that I planned anyway. Well, guess what? I'm always going to say some plan is better than no plan at all, right? And even if only a portion of what you laid out with the Lord before the week started is way better than just hoping for the best. And that's actually what the stewardship circle is for. And this is what I'm talking about here over on Substack. We want to take this right theology. Who is the author of time? How has he talked to us about it? I don't know if you listened to episode 438, just came out yesterday. Did you know that in scripture, the word time is mentioned over 700 times? And then when you start factoring other words like day and night and season and at that time would be a direct reference to time, but other ways that we talk about time, 7,000 references to time in scripture. So should we just be going to the time, management, productivity people when it comes to how do we steward our time as believers? I think we go first to the author of time and look at and let that right theology turn into a faithful methodology. So let this right believing about who he is, what he's given us, why he's given it to us, turn into what we actually do with it, right? And I don't know about you, but I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. But here's what I love about that story from Matthew 25. Those two servants who did hear that, I guarantee not everything that they invested that money in turned out the way they hoped and planned, right? They probably did some planting and some of those crops didn't turn into a harvest, or it got ruined because there was some kind of a drought or something that came along. I bet they did some bartering and trading, and sometimes they probably got a bad deal. So, but the master didn't say, I'm going to nitpick all these little things. He said, you understood why I gave this to you, and that your role was to steward it on my behalf, to invest it in order to expand my kingdom. I'm rewarding the heart in which you've approached what I've given you, not did you perfectly do it, right? That's the difference when it comes to stewarding. And that is why I always say that a healthy sense of stewardship is going to lead to a healthy sense of productivity and profitability, right? Like we are going to have this greater intention around our week. And so when you join the stewardship circle, you are going to get the Faithful Week framework right away. So you can start building a week around what matters most instead of starting to feeling like you have to start over every Monday. And then what we're going to do is every month, we're going to have Faithful Living Intensives where you are not only we're not going to actually pull away from the busyness of life. We're going to focus on some really key, not only theology, beliefs around time, but also then the methodology. What am I doing? So that you can build out this stewardship field guide over time, right? Which is why I'm recommending that you come in as an annual subscriber, because we are going to be building this out over the next year, taking one area of faithful stewardship deeper and helping you put it into practice. And then in between those intensives, you have the stewardship circle for the real life questions. Hey, Lissa, it's Monday. What do I do with this? Or, hey, Lissa, it's Wednesday. Where does this fit? Or, hey, Lissa, I've got all these requests, or I've got all these rings, dings, and pings, whatever, how do I determine if this is even mine to carry and it should be getting my time? What do I do now that my week doesn't look anything like the one I planned, right? If you're already an annual member of the Stewardship Circle, you get access to that chat where you can ask questions. So please make sure that you actually use that, because that is where we're actually going to get the real-time support around what it is that we're doing, right? So I'll drop that link in the chat again if you haven't subscribed yet up to be an annual member, because that allows you to bring the question. Share a screenshot of your planner, or if you're using a digital type thing, Send it there. Tell us where you're stuck. Bring me a Tuesday at 10 a.m. Okay. I want to hear where does it feel like things are going off and how can we come back to looking at this from a place of stewardship? So those of you who've already joined us, we opened up the Stewardship Circle last week. So congratulations for coming in. If you're not inside yet, you can join right now for $80 for the whole year. And just so you guys know, that introductory annual price is going to end tomorrow, which is Tuesday the 11th. And then on Wednesday, yes, you can pay $100 for the exact same thing. Nothing's going to disappear on Wednesday. You don't lose any benefits. The circle's not closing. You're still going to get the Faithful Week framework right away and all the resources and access to what we're doing, but introductory pricing is just going to be over. So if you already know that you want to spend the next year learning to faithfully steward your time with us, then don't come back on Wednesday thinking, why didn't I just do this yesterday? Okay, so if you're already watching here on Substack, you can just click to upgrade, or you can grab the link that is in the chat in order to do that. Okay, and just make sure you choose annual. All right, okay, I'm excited about us not trying to do this next mistake. Do you know what the next mistake is that most people do? They try to fill every hour. So I'm going to talk for a minute about margin. If I were to look at your calendar, or maybe better yet, how your week last week actually went, not just what you planned, how much white space would there be? Are you intentionally putting it in? Are you hoping that maybe it's there somewhere during the day or at the end of the day? I find that one of the things that gets us into trouble with traditional time blocking is it looks really good on paper. Every half hour has a job. Everything fits perfectly. But then what happens? One thing changes, like a meeting runs late, somebody needs you, maybe you're more tired than you expected, something takes twice as long as you planned, and then it feels like it's like everything's now crashing, right? It's like rush hour on the 405, and the whole plan feels blown. I remember working with a coach a couple of years ago, and she had me do like a time audit. And I was so proud of myself. I tracked where my time went every single half hour for that entire week, including the weekends. And then I went back and I color coded so I could see where were personal things, where were business things, where were family things. And I remember showing her that, expecting her to be like, wow, Lissa, you are really intentional with your time. You're really productive. And she was like, oh my goodness. No wonder you feel like you're all over the place, because you are. I was jumping back and forth from one thing to the next. Everything was literally just like hitting up against itself. There was zero margin. I did not have any white space until it was time to sleep. And so I remember just how that felt, and it still felt like there wasn't enough time. And so here's what I want to challenge you. As you're planning out your week, it will only work if you actually build in some margin. Because if you don't, well, I guess you could hope that maybe absolutely nothing unexpected happens. Then you're not going to have a workable plan. That's why one of the Faithful Week principles is margin before more, right? Margin before more. I would rather get less done and have more margin than try to cram all those things in and not have those spaces to breathe, to rest, to reset, to whatever it is that needs to happen in between. And inside the Faithful Week framework training, I say white space isn't wasted space. Did you hear that? White space isn't wasted space. This is where real life fits, right? And we are not trying to build a week that prevents that. We're not just trying to build a week that prevents Tuesday at 10 a.m. We're trying to build a week that can survive it, because Tuesday at 10 a.m. is going to happen. Yeah, and I love the idea of Kairos time, and that's something that I love talking about. We have Chronos time. That's the actual minutes that we can measure on a clock and a calendar. And then we have Kairos time, which are the moments. Those times when it just feels like it's beyond time, right? When it feels like time is almost standing still, when that time just is pregnant with so much purpose in it. That's such a beautiful place to live. And I love that distinction between Chronos time and Kairos time. So thanks for pointing that out. And yet we still live in a Chronos world, right? I have to be sometimes in a certain place at a certain time. And so I do sometimes need to know what time is it? And I'm looking here. And then there are times, right, where I'm really being present to what the Lord is doing. And it may feel like it doesn't matter what the time is. It's just what it's time for. And I love that as believers, we can actually live in both worlds. And when we have a Faithful Week plan, then we are able to create space for that. I don't know about you, but when my planner and my calendar is super booked, I'm not even hearing those things. Or I may hear them and kind of feel those nudges from the Holy Spirit, but then I'm just like, kind of ignoring them because I don't have time, right? And yet Time is the thing that he's given us to be with him and to do what he's called us to. And so that's why that's so important that we are creating that space for that. And the last principle that I want to just touch on real quick while we're here today, that I talk about inside the Faithful Week framework, is return instead of restart. And I think this is so important because you may have a great plan and you may even use the Faithful Week framework and you may build out the time anchor zones and you may build in the margin and you may put those oranges in first so that way they don't get crowded out by the Skittles. You may do all of that. But what do you do when the week changes? What do you do when the interruption comes? What do you do when the life thing happens? Do you throw away the whole thing? I mean, how often do we say, well, so much for today, or I guess this week is off, or I'll start again Monday, right? So here's what I encourage you to do. First of all, make sure that you build out the Faithful Week framework and build it out for you in the season that you're in. So if you haven't upgraded yet to become an annual subscriber, make sure that you do that before that pricing goes up on Wednesday. And let's start walking out that process. But even once you build that, when life happens, I'm going to encourage you to return instead of restart. To return instead of restart, right? Instead of saying, well, I'm going to start over tomorrow, or I'm going to start over next Monday, just return to that rhythm that you've already built because you took time with the author of time to do that, right? You've already decided this is where I'm focusing time this week. You've already built the rhythm. You've added in the details, hopefully built in some margin. And now you have something to return to. And here's one of the keys that I think most people don't think about when it comes to faithful planning. You can't just keep it to yourself. What happens when you have a plan and you know what you're going to be doing that day, but you don't tell anybody around you, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, your neighbors, your team, your employees, your employer, whoever it is? What happens? They have no idea, right? So then they're just coming in whenever their idea strikes them and they're barging in the door, quote unquote, all day long. And so I always encourage you to share with the people who need to know, because if you don't, you are already setting yourself up to be interrupted. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't times when there are divine interruptions that the Lord says, hey, I know that's what you've planned, but that's why James tells us hold those plans loosely. And there may be times when somebody genuinely needs you. Right? But if we don't communicate that, how are they ever going to know? And when those things happen, whether it was something that I could have talked to somebody about ahead of time, or maybe I couldn't have even anticipated, how do we then not just throw up our hands and say, well, so much for today, or so much for this week? How do we actually come back to something that can get us right into a good rhythm? And guess what? It may not be that everything that week went according to the way that you thought it was going to. When is it ever going to, right? But now you're faithfully stewarding the time that you do have in front of you instead of waiting for the time next Monday. And so I want to encourage you today, okay? You don't need 3 more hours in your day. You don't even need 17 colored pens, although colored pens and highlighters are really fun, especially for planner girls. You don't even need the perfect Sunday night planning ritual, although I do think you need a time before Monday, because remember we started this whole thing with saying don't start Monday on Monday, right? But you need a faithful practice of how do you decide what are your oranges? Pretend this isn't orange because it's orange, right? What are the things that matter before your week starts? And where does it live? Where is the time anchor zone that this is going to go in? And then when the plans change, not if, when, because it will, then you just simply pause and ask the foundational question we talk about all the time around here. What is it time for? Right? That's where we go back to that. And maybe something has changed in the answer to that question, or maybe it is actually what you had already decided before the week started. And that just gently brings you right back there, right? So if you remember nothing else from today, I want you to remember this. It's almost noon on a Monday. A faithful week is what's going to give your priorities a home, but not every minute a task. There's a difference. You want to give your priorities a home, but not every minute a task. This is not about having the perfect schedule. It's about having a faithful rhythm that you can return to. Talk about how freeing that would be. Right? This is how we avoid getting to, right, this time in a month or this time in the year and saying, where did the time go? And already feeling like we're behind. So if you're sitting here thinking like, this is exactly how I want to approach my time, I just don't, maybe you're tired of productivity hacks. Maybe you're tired of time management advice that doesn't really work because it doesn't actually get to the heart level of things, what you're believing about your time and the one who gave it to you. And you're saying, wow, this feels different than maybe what I've tried in the past and what's worked until it hasn't worked. And maybe you're kind of intrigued about like, hey, Lissa, what does it look like to steward my days? What does it look like to steward my week? What does it look like to just steward time in general? Then I would love to have you inside the stewardship circle. Because when you join, you're not waiting for something to happen later. The Faithful Week framework will already be there waiting for you. And you can start building that out today, Monday, or whatever day you're watching this, right? And I'm going to walk you through how do we do that? And then how do we test it? And how do we tweak it? And how do we come back to it when life happens? And then as an annual member, every month, we're going to go deeper into our Faithful Living Intensives. We're going to start building out your stewardship field guide so that you are able to walk through seasons and you're able to pay attention to how do I move a goal or a project or a focus forward when I'm so busy in all the day-to-day stuff? How do I wait well? How do I rest well? How do I faithfully, set goals and actually achieve them when it's something connected to what it is that God is calling me to? And when the question isn't just, what should I believe, but actually, what do I do? That's when you can bring questions into the stewardship circle. And I think that's going to be one of the most beautiful things is having a place where you can get timely coaching, where you can say, hey, this is my Tuesday at 10 a.m. and get some insight from other people who are also wanting to be faithful with the time that we have, who also want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. And I think that having other people around us, I think it matters more than we sometimes realize. I don't know what you do. If you work in an office and you've got people all around you, you can still feel like you're on your own. But I know for a lot of women that I work with, they're doing things, virtually. And so oftentimes it can feel like we're on our own. And I think it's hard to practice a different way of living when everyone around us, right, the world around us, the people around us is reinforcing hurry and overcommitting and doing more and burning the candle at both ends and never enough, right? Sometimes changing the way you steward your life means you put some different voices around you, right? They say you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So maybe you need a different 5 people, right? Maybe you need people who are asking, hey, what has God entrusted to me? Hey, what does matter in this season? Hey, what is it time for? That's the kind of community that we're building inside the stewardship circle. And so excited that so many of you came in over the weekend after we opened that up. So hello to you, and make sure that you introduce yourself over inside the chat. And if that's not you yet, and you know that this is what it's time for, then I want to encourage you to click upgrade right here on Substack, choose the annual option, and join us over there inside the stewardship circle. And immediately you're going to get the Faithful Week framework so you can start working on that. Through tomorrow, the 11th of August, the full year is just $80. On Wednesday, it's $100 for the same membership. So if you already know that you want to be part of this next season with us, you want to see things different, not only with how you're approaching time, but also the results of your time, then come and join us. And if you have a question before you join, put it in the comments here. You can put it in the chat and you can respond to one of the things that I've shared over there. I'm happy to answer it for you. And I'm excited to welcome you guys over there. So whether you join us today or not, I want you to leave with one question, right? Here's the question that I want to be in your mind. I have women tell me, Lissa, you're in my head all day long, which this is a good thing. Okay, here's the question. You ready? What is it time for? Not what time is it? And then already I feel behind. Not how can I squeeze more into the time that I have? Not how can I get more done or catch up with my list? But what is it time for? What has God entrusted to me today, this week? And what is my next faithful step? And if you want help learning to live that out week after week after week, I'd love to practice it with you inside the stewardship circle. Because when we want to change something, it's going to take time, especially when we're trying to change things about our time, right? So that annual introductory pricing is $80 through tomorrow. Wednesday, it's $100. You can go ahead and just upgrade around this video, choose annual, and I'll meet you inside and send you the Faithful Week framework.